Willie D Live.
It's Willie D, y'all, back with another episode of information and instructions to help you navigate through this wild, crazy, beautiful world. In the studio, Kanita Lewis Harrison.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Is it often that you feel welcome in the kind of business that you're in? Like, oftentimes when people hear from you, it's not good news.
Unfortunately, however, there's an upside.
Yeah.
So when I'm out and about and I tell people, it always invokes curiosity and conversation.
Yeah.
So it can go both ways, right?
Yeah.
People are always interested in knowing, what do you do? How did you do it? How did you get into it? How long you been doing this? All that good stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is a very interesting craft.
It is a craft. Thanks for acknowledging that.
Yeah. So, and you can easily start a conversation no matter what room you're in. People are kind of interested. It's like kind of spooky, but at the same time, tell us more. Tell us more. Like, how did you get into it? How did you get into the funeral business?
I'm a fourth generation funeral director. Mm-hmm. My family is from Alexandria, Louisiana.
Okay.
And my mother's father was a funeral director. So I started just coming around my family's establishment and fell in love with the idea of being a funeral director.
Mm.
The idea.
Because
back then, you didn't have a lot of women doing the directing. Most women did the paperwork, the cosmetics. But when I said I want to be a funeral director, it was kind of laughable. Mm-hmm. However, I believed that I could, so I did.
How old were you when you first got this inkling?
Ooh, that's a good question. I was about 6 years old. My grandfather said I was playing with dolls, and I had a shoebox. Put my doll in the shoebox.
What?
And put my cards in a row. And he asked me what I was doing, and I said I was having a funeral.
Okay.
Yes.
And how old do you remember when you first started going around bodies in the morgue?
I was pretty young, maybe 10, 11, 12. But you got to remember, in Louisiana, it's family. So the house is upstairs, the living quarters are upstairs. The funeral home is downstairs. So the phone rings upstairs.
You really grew up in a funeral home?
My cousins and my mom's first cousin lived upstairs. Funeral home was downstairs. So when we would go to the house to eat and celebrate, do everything you do, you just had to be quiet because a funeral could be going on downstairs.
So this is normal, seeing caskets and
and removals,
people on gurneys,
yes, all of that.
People just dead, just seeing that.
More living than dead. You deal with the living more than you do the deceased. That's a part of it, but you're really reaching the people. It's a people business.
Did they teach you that, or you just picked that up? Because that is good. That's good how you just said that. It's more about the living.
It's a people business, more the living than the dead.
Did your friends find it weird that you was interested in?
Initially, a lot of questions. Are you sure? Because there were a lot of challenges. I'm from a small town, right? So we didn't have a mortuary school. So I had to relocate if I really wanted to do this. And I made up in my mind, this is what I'm going to do. So I started exploring options. I prayed for guidance. And I was led to Houston, to Commonwealth, which is one of the best options for those who pursue mortuary science. Mm-hmm. And I started out at Northwestern University in Natchitoches, would take classes there until I was ready for the stage where I needed to go to the next level and pursue my degree in mortuary science.
And it is a science to it.
It is.
It's not just something anybody can just wake up and say, oh, I got this down.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
You have to really have a passion for it. People talk about callings. I love Dr. Miles Monroe, if you ever heard of him. He's deceased now, but he's from the Bahamas. And one of the key things he would say is the richest place in the world is the cemetery. It's not for the monetary things that are in the ground. It's because of the gifts that are on inside of us that we never poured out and we buried. Our stories that we never told, our gifts that were never shared are buried in the cemetery. So he always says, die empty.
Die empty.
Pouring out.
Okay,
Yeah.
because some people, when they hear die empty, they think, okay, that means like you die with no money.
Oh,
A lot of
no.
people die with no money.
No, this is internal.
Yeah.
Die empty, pouring
Okay.
out.
Yeah,
So
right.
I decided to choose the path that led to purpose, which is why I say a calling is what it is. If you get into business because you see money or opportunity for dollars, you won't stay because it's not enough to keep you there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the trials and the things you go through, both psychologically, spiritually, you know, it's a challenge. You're dealing with people who have had a death every single day. Think about that. Who wants to really do that?
Yeah.
As in my case, for over 23 years.
How do you compartmentalize those people's anguish and the energy that's transferred to you?
You have to be
Because
like
you are passionate and you do
Yeah.
care. You can't just turn it off.
Can't just turn it off.
But how do you compartmentalize it so that you don't go insane?
Good question. So I'm from Louisiana, so I like to compare it to the alligator, right? When you see an alligator, they're very thick-skinned. They can feel, they can sense, they know you're there. Their presence is known, but the skin is thick enough that every single thing doesn't penetrate them. So you have to have the skin, I would say, like an alligator, because the purpose is I still want to feel them, but I can't let it puncture me because I have to be strong enough to be there for them. I have to be the one to hold in my emotions so that I can help them endure theirs.
Have you ever buried someone or funeralized someone who was not related to you and you felt their pain so much that it affected your job?
Of course, more than I can count. You know, people always ask me, like, what is the case or what was the one or what gets you, those type stories. And I always say one key thing. People think it's children. And yes, that's very sad. And people think, they say, well, especially if you've lost a parent, how do you bury your father just passed and you're burying someone and you're showing up. And you know what I tell them? It's not those cases. The cases that hurt me the most, I would say, are those who are unprepared. People who don't have a clue on what to do. It breaks my heart because I sit at a table with them during the most difficult time in their lives. They don't even know where to begin. They don't have the funds to cover what needs to be done. They've not had the conversation. No one knows this person that we're burying. They don't know their story. We got to sit there and pretty much come up with something that this person could have given us if they may have known. We never know when death is going to come. But there's a planning or preparation piece there. And why is it that we avoid that so much? That's the devastating part.
How should one prepare for death?
Preparation starts with a conversation. I believe awareness is the start of anything. If you're aware, then you can align yourself and then you can form an agreement. That's one of my key things in life that I stand on, relationship and professionally. Have the awareness of knowing I have to do this. Just as sure as I'm breathing, I will stop one day. We will all inevitably face death. So what should we do about that? Start by having conversations with those you love, by wishing what you would have if you were in charge and able to do it. What would that look like? How would you like to be remembered? What will your legacy be, right? Like the things that made you laugh, made you smile, the things you enjoyed on a day when there was no work involved. What type of work did you love most? The things that, colors. I love butterflies. Everybody knows that, right? So I want to be able to say, this is how I lived, this is what I loved, and I want others to know that. I really feel like it's important that we tell our own stories. So I challenge people that are around me, write your obituary, and they laugh and say, I'm not doing that. Well, write your life story. Write it. My grandfather wrote his obituary. Those days of having a P.O. box, they're gone. You can't go to the P.O. box, and get out the documents that the grandparents set aside for the day when it comes. Now we're in a digital world. Do you have a file that you keep documents in? These are things that really we should be thinking about. we should be thinking about, how will I be celebrated? Do I want to be mourned? See, because everybody's different in their approach. Do I want you to go to the beach and have a celebration there? Or do I want to be in a building? Do I want to go to my church? Like, how are we having these conversations, or are we having them at all?
I knew this was going to be a good episode, but this is an especially good episode because, I mean, it's probably, it's got to be one of the most important, period,
Right.
just for the information that we're all going to need. There's nobody that's listening to this episode right now that is going like, well,
That's not me.
That's not me.
I don't
That'll
qualify.
never happen to me.
That's right. And then you hear those sayings, will just put me in a, just throw me out back. Those things that's not possible. There has to be a plan. And if you don't plan, how selfish, because then you leave it for someone else to do.
That's what gets me about some guys. Like, and I'm just gonna keep it real, fellas. And if the shoe fit, you can't quit. Listen, I know some dudes. I've heard guys say they don't want to get an insurance policy because they don't want the woman spending the money with some other dude, or they don't want some dude even in the house. They don't want to leave a house to her or whatever because they don't want the guy in the house.
Okay.
And to that I say, excuse my French and pardon my vernacular, stop marrying these hoes. And that's just how I feel about it. Like, if you feel like you've got a woman that you can't trust, why are you with her? And what does that say about you as a man?
Right.
I would not want to burden my children. Some of us, we're a financial burden in life. We don't have to be in debt.
So I mentioned alignment, right?
Yeah.
So how do you align yourself when you feel that way? Visit your local funeral provider. I manage a premier location in Houston, and people walk in every day saying, I want to set something up for myself, pay it off, 3, 5, 10 is too long, but it's an option. Pay it off. Your selections are done. You're done. You don't have anything left to worry about these other concerns that you may have. You could start there. Align yourself with what you need to cover you, since you're so concerned about that, which that's a whole nother issue. You probably can do another show on them not marrying those type of women, right?
Mm-hmm.
That could be a whole nother show.
It could be.
However, I will say they can align themselves with what needs to be done so that they don't have to be worried about that piece. Because there are other pieces to worry about, right? This is one piece of the puzzle, which is why wise people pre-plan. They go in, they select, they pay it off, they're done. Here's what and listen, I'm not a licensed insurance agent. I don't sell insurance. I have nothing for or against. What I would say is I have insurance, but it's not for when I pass for the funeral. It's for when I pass for the responsibilities and obligations financially, so that my children, my family, my husband, if something were to happen to me, would not be in a situation that they would not be able to handle or keep what we have invested in, right? So the funeral should be separate. Not everybody sees it that way. So we have a whole community that will purchase a $10,000 policy, and in 20 years, it's $10,000. And you've paid for 20 years a monthly premium that has probably surpassed the value of what that is. And then when you take it to the funeral home and you turn it over, that funeral that was 10, 20 years ago is now 20,000.
25.
What you gonna
30.
do? You can't control inflation with a policy. But you can control it if 20 years ago you had walked in your local establishment that you trust and said, let me take care of my business. Sign, pay, done. It's a choice.
Yeah. I've paid for at least a few dozen funerals.
You tell me that.
At least a few dozen funerals.
Sad.
And it's very sad. It's heartbreaking because it doesn't have to be that way, right?
No.
Like we all, at some point, we're going to come across enough money where we can do that, because they got installments where you can pay the funeral plan. You can pay for your funeral,
of course,
in installments, just like you're paying installments for that insurance policy.
Right.
You can pay installments
on your funeral plan. And some people say, well, I don't trust, the funeral home may be out of business by the time I pass. Well, that's why you have trusted with the state of Texas And I know we're open to all states. So every state is different. But for instance, in Texas, you have the Trust Department of Banking. So those funds are secure. You have insurance funded options where your policy is insured. You get a letter, right, and telling you this is the value. You keep up with it just like you would a policy. So there are options. And the saddest part of it all is when the family is here sitting at the table and no one chose that option before we're at the table. That's not the time. You know, when people have passed and, you know, they assume every hospital has a morgue. They don't. You may not have the time.
That's crazy. I assumed every hospital had a morgue.
Not every hospital. Think of nursing homes. Think of facilities where people pass. What happens when you're at home? Where's the morgue? The medical examiners, right? So that's not the time while they're dying or laying there passing or have passed to have those type conversations and decisions. There's emotions involved. There's a lot there. That should be done when we can make an intellectual decision with non-emotion.
What's the time limit on a body being held in the hospital and at the examiner's office?
Every facility has their own time limit, right? And they'll express that when death occurs. You will definitely be allowed maybe 24, 48 hours. But here's the thing. We all know that we want to see our loved ones most likely. And the preparation for that is necessary, timely, right? So even though they can be there, the best thing to do is to have your location selected so there's no gap in time from when they pass and they're sitting there unprepared. Our duty is to receive them and do our best to slow down that process so that we can, you know, preserve them and allow time and a space to be visited with. We work against that. Time is not on our side when we leave here. The body is created by God to just break down. pH, it turns on itself. So you hear these stories like decomp and all that. It's true. The body breaks down. It's supposed to. So in order for us to slow that down, we have processes that as funeral directors and embalmings that we do to allow for the family to have that window of time. But when you're just sitting there and you're making a decision where to go, time is not on your side.
There's a couple things that I'm suspicious of about the funeral business.
I understand.
One of the biggest things that I'm suspicious of is abuse of corpse. And there have been cases that have substantiated my fears where people have abused corpses either sexually or in some other kind of way. And I'm sure you've heard about this. You're in the business. And the second thing is cemeteries. There are some cemeteries, for example, even in Houston, they only have so much land. But it seems like they keep burying. They got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 funerals every single weekend. Every Saturday. It's like 10 funerals at least. And it's like, it's only look like 2-3 acres over here. Like, where are all these bodies being buried? And I've been coming to this cemetery all my life. You know, we're talking 50 years here. Where are these bodies being buried?
That's a valid question. So to answer your first question about the concerns that people are doing things that are inappropriate, there's processes for that, number one. There's a governing agency also, the Funeral Service Commission, that is responsible for overseeing funeral homes. So when you see those type cases, first of all, it's devastating. It's disappointing, and it's embarrassing to the industry because most people in this industry truly care or they wouldn't be there. That's why you got to wean out the bad ones everywhere you go. That's in any industry, correct? But the beauty of it all is when you work for a location that has guidelines, policies, and procedures in place, that shouldn't have to be a concern, which is why you want to go somewhere where you don't have those type concerns. Reputable. Secondly, when you say the property, like how are they burying all these people? You'd be amazed, right? So the cemetery I manage has a 300-plus year plan. Here's what you got to understand. Lots are measured. You can do single depth, double depth. The cemetery is created to last as long as possible by the measurements that are used for each interment. Now, I know you've heard horror stories where, like you mentioned, where they're doing things that they should not do that's not appropriate, right, in the cemetery. That's why you research. We Google everything, right? We use reviews. We use content. We want to know before we go eat at a restaurant, what do people say about it? My recommendation to anyone with those type concerns, do your research. Find out, what are these people really doing? And the best people to tell you are people who've been there. Google tells the truth. Anyone who runs a business knows there's no way out of that. Once those surveys are sent or comments are submitted, it's there. There's no removing it. It's tell all. So I always recommend people to research, know the companies you're dealing with, look into their historical data, see, can they be trusted? We do it with everything else.
Well, I think Google can be trusted in many cases.
To an extent.
Yeah, there's always,
and maybe I shouldn't even say Google.
There's always some
let's just say it's
unscrupulous
review
behavior.
Yeah,
happening,
review material available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and listen, word of mouth. The best is referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I always tell people, now I know it's different in the big city, right? But where we're from, you know people. And you usually trust. Funeral homes are like the people you trust, you learn, because it's unfortunate, but most families who use us again, right? So you don't want to have to do that, but that's usually how you determine the location of trust. It's usually a family or heritage connection. And for those who don't have that, that's where the research comes in.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now, for anybody that's out there wondering, I know y'all going to be out there saying like, well, where does she work? Where does she work? Where does she work? For, let's say, liability purposes,
And conversations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't really talk about where she works at because,
it's not about that.
Ain't no telling what this conversation going also.
Well, here's the thing.
Y'all know me. Ain't no telling what I might say.
Well, here's what I will say.
Yeah.
That's not why I'm here, right? I'm not here to bring any attention to where I work. I'm here to help people. You said you had a platform to educate and to inform. So that aligns with who I am. Because anywhere I go, people will tell you, my mother was an educator. So what I try to do is leave them with something to think about. So you bringing me to the table, it's not about that today. It's about helping others so that we can start by having a conversation.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. We don't want to put the focus on the company. This is really about the company you keep. You dig what I'm saying?
I love it.
That's
good.
What is the most satisfying? I think I know the answer, but what is the most satisfying part about your job?
Helping people.
Yeah.
Truly. I have a passion for people.
For some reason, I believe you. I sincerely, because I'm very, very good at reading people.
Yes.
And from the time I first spoke to you on the phone, I just felt the sincerity through the line.
Yeah. And when you put people first, everything else follows. Yeah. I have a team that I have to manage, right? That I'm responsible for guiding and directing, not managing, leading. And one of the key things that I teach is people don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. Okay? Mm-hmm. It starts there. And when you care about people and you put serving them first, everything else follows. Success, taking care of others, putting them before yourself matters. And in this type business, you can't be selfish. Too many long hours, too many days, a lot of work, a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice. When you have a family, you sacrifice to serve others, okay? My family almost prevented me from going into business because I saw the sacrifice, the countless hours, the phones ringing at night, the many missed events because you're at the funeral. The reality is a lot goes into helping others. But when you say yes to it, it's a firm yes.
Yeah. And oftentimes in the service industry, like people will say that it's a thankless business, but not that business, because I know when people are helping you in that regard, I mean, you're pretty much at your worst when
Yes.
when you're burying a loved one.
Yes.
And when somebody is there and they're showing genuine concern,
Mm-hmm.
it means a lot. You do have to be that rock, so to
Correct.
speak, because you catching people. It don't matter if you're a 7-foot man, 7 feet, 300 pounds.
Yes. When they see mama,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
you see mom in that casket,
That's
man,
right.
or you see your
Yeah,
child
your
in that
spouse,
casket
your
or
child.
something.
That's
Yeah.
right. Loved ones, period.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we have to be strong for them, right? Reassure them. One thing I will tell you, the key thing I hear from my family is, you never left my side.
Mm-hmm.
I have people ask me, I had a friend pass, what do I do, Kenita? And I say, be there, show up, be present, let them feel you. They don't have to hear you. They just need to know you're there. And I think that's the most important piece of the healing, is being present for them. Because the funeral ends and then everybody goes home, all right? And everyone goes on with life. But the person who was closest to the person who passed is still having to overcome grief.
Mm-hmm.
There's stages to grief, right? And they can happen at any given time, any given way. I've heard people tell me, it took me years to get to this point of acceptance, because I was in shock and disbelief and anger. And, I found myself in these places where I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to accept. That's why they have grief counseling. That's why they have support groups, right? It's important that we have access to what we need as a people. It's important that we not have too much pride to say, hey, I need help getting over this, getting through this. And you never really just get over it, right? It stays with you. You manage it. But it's with help. That's why I have a life coach. I believe in that. I have people that I trust that, through my church that I love and are there for me. And I also have a life coach who will teach me and guide me through life, decision making, and how I process information, how I lead, how do I work through emotional setbacks that we all see. Me, I just may see more than others.
I've seen an uptick in fights at funerals.
Mm.
How much of your leadership involves conflict resolution?
A whole lot.
Yeah?
You know why? Business requires you to be able to deal with people and deal with conflict resolution at all times. It's unfortunate to hear that, because it is becoming too common, which is why we do not get involved. We always have to be the mediator, but at the same time, not be involved in conflict within families, because you can't really do that. You have to stay neutral. But I don't hesitate to have security, because we're at a time where boundaries are not kept.
Do you talk to your clients and say, hey, is there anything we should be worried about? And if so, do you kind of give them advice on how much security they may need?
Definitely.
Like, if you ever had a situation, you knew it was a volatile situation, you say, look, I can't tell you what to do, but I think for something like this, you should have at least 17 cops.
Well, let's hope not. Then we might need to call HBD or whoever in. But here's what I will say. We advise, right? But if they don't take that advice, as leaders, it's up to us to make that decision. So I don't take that lightly, because I've been in situations where fights have broken out, and unfortunately, lives have been lost. Okay? So,
like at the funeral?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay? So I don't play when it comes to security, nor should anyone. This is a time where emotions are high, and a lot happens behind the scenes that we don't know anything about, nor do we need to know. Our role and responsibility is to protect that family and ourselves. So if any leader has the inclination that there is a risk involved, security should be there, whether the family decides or not. What if they can't afford it? We make a decision, because I'm not going to let that prevent me from protecting those I'm responsible for.
Mm-hmm. So when you make that decision, is that decision to shut down shop, or is it to?
It depends on the caliber of the extent of the issue.
Do you ever take on some of that cost, the burden of the?
That's a part of the business.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, how do you got kids?
Of course I do.
How many kids?
I have 4.
Are your kids going into the business also?
Not one of them.
Not one.
And it's okay, because they have their own lives. See, that's another thing that I always say. Everyone has their own purpose and calling. Let them choose their path. Mm-hmm. My oldest is a dynamic digital media expert, creator. He runs his own business, JA Visuals. I'll give him a little plug. He's a wonderful creative. And I love the fact that I allowed my children to have their own space to thrive and be who they were and not who I am or who I want them to be. Mm-hmm. And also, my middle son is an athlete. He's about to graduate. He's also a Grand Reserve champion and Grand Showman for steers, and he loves agriculture. Mm. I have a youngest son who was a swimmer, and after 5 years, he said, I'm tired of swimming. I need to do something else. So now he's diving into football, but academically strong. My oldest graduated, is working. And my daughter by marriage, she is a wonderful daughter. She has always loved cosmetics and hair and taking care of others as well through therapeutic studies. So that's what she's doing. So it's okay if none of them decide to be in the funeral industry, because guess what? Someone will answer the call. They've got to know their assignment and do that.
Well, your daughter is about as close as it comes. She's doing cosmetic.
She loves, but she loves therapy more than she likes hair and makeup. But therapeutic studies is her thing. Yep.
You ever get short-handed, you say, hey, baby,
yeah, that's right.
Come on in and make this money right
You know,
quick.
Believe it or not, when we recruit, that's one of the areas I believe is a great avenue, cosmetologists, right? And those who are in the service community. So I've gone to some of our, I guess, career opportunities through the hospitality school, like at U of H. And, you know, we've gone out to those type places where people are really into serving others, hospitality, cosmetology. They actually love, especially people who love doing events like weddings and parties. They make great funeral directors. You know why? Because you get this one time to do it right. You don't have 6 and 8, 9 months, a year to plan like a wedding. You got a few days, and you got to pull it off, right? So we do a lot of celebration of life. So we do displays, and we do a lot. But it makes it fun when you're creative and you have that little niche. So I love showing people around and giving them the opportunity to just come in and say, would this be something I could do one day? Because the day of raising your children to do it, those days are kind of not as they were. Let me say that. The funeral business has changed a lot. So now it's preparing the future so that they're prepared for what's to come.
Do you see AI being involved in the funeral industry at all?
You know, that's a good question. Maybe on the service piece, you know, like come in, sign here instead of having a physical greeter. You know, maybe some type of stand where people can digitally sign, or there's
what about people being able to view the funeral?
Oh, yeah.
View the body from home.
Yeah, we do that already. So like
Y'all
Facebook Live, you have different organizations and companies that can help you by having services live streamed and all of that. So that's kind of there. COVID really pushed us into that next wave of technology and serving through technology. Mm-hmm. So that has already begun. But this is still a hands-on. You need hands and feet. You need people
Boots on the ground.
That's it, boots on the ground type industry. It's going to be, I could see maybe some robotic lawnmowers mowing the grass, maybe, right, one day. But people, you don't always need in this business.
How needed are black people in this business?
All people needed in this business.
No, I will
say,
I'm talking about working in the business.
Yeah,
I'm talking
true.
about like there is. I would assume that there's not enough black people who are in the service industry.
You'd be surprised.
In the funeral home.
You'd be surprised.
What's the percentage?
I don't know the percentage, but I do know it's not as low as some people think. I mean, really, to be honest with you. So I manage locations very diverse, right? Mm-hmm. So you have all walks of life. We serve all walks of life, right? But you do have some locations that are very geared towards taking care of particular cultures. And that's great, and that's fine. But I do believe diversity is best because to me, I would prefer to serve all. The reason is because whoever walks in my door, I should be able to assist them, whatever their culture, whatever their request, within reason. So as far as statistics go for us as a community, I would have to research that. But I will say we have a strong handprint. There are organizations that are set up just for like African-American funeral directors, and it's there. You can choose to be a part of that and grow and then bring others along with you. That's one of my goals, to always help someone else to grow where I may not have had that hand to pull me over. I came into the industry and walked into my location at a time where there were very few like me around, very few. However, I never let that limit me. So therefore, it's opened many doors for me, and I'm very blessed that I made a choice to explore in a way that I didn't probably consider at the beginning of my career. But it has really given me an opportunity to spread my wings and expand my reach, my impact on a greater level. So I just believe as we go forward, the time where, and in different towns, you'll still see a lot of differentiators where this funeral home is predominantly one culture and another is another, right? But I just believe that there's a space where we can all function in the right capacity in a diverse environment.
Yeah. Well, why is it that a lot of these cemeteries are segregated?
That's historical. It goes back to what we call the founding principles. Does it stay that way? That's up to us. I've made changes in a demographic in an area where change needed to happen. So just think, had I never said yes, someone else would have, a change still would have come. It's up to us to decide what we say yes to. You got to know your assignment. And thankfully for me, I know mine.
What's the wildest yes you've ever said yes to? Like, let me back up. What is the wildest request you've ever said yes to?
Oh, wow. Wildest request in the industry?
In the industry, like somebody said, look, I want to be on a motorcycle when I die.
Yeah.
I need to be propped up in the motorcycle.
Yeah,
right in the front, in the middle of the aisle, and I want to have my hat turned on to the back, and I want to have a prostitute.
You know what?
Right behind me.
Well, I hope not. Because you said
people have those requests.
You just said they shouldn't have those type of women, didn't you? You got to do a whole show on that.
But I'm saying, I am. But I do think it's tasteless. But there are people who would still want
Jokingly,
that.
But yes. Yeah. So wildest, good question. I would say most creative, right? Okay. Most creative, where we had a service where we had the strobe lights going. They had a private strobe lights.
Okay.
In the evening. See, I can transform my location into whatever we want it to be.
Okay.
And we transformed it. He was an Astros fan, so we kind of set up different things and put in the colors and linen and had a live band in the back. We had a private little bar set up, and all their friends came in, and you would have thought it was more of a party than what you traditionally see as a funeral. And that's okay, because that's what they wanted.
Was he buried in his Astros jersey?
All of that. We even had the casket like custom made with a peel off where you could see the Astros print and logo. So
What?
it was pretty cool. So it's amazing. I've never encountered the stand up. I've seen those on social media. I choose not to, dive too much into those because that has to be like you mentioned earlier, craft. You have to have a craft for that. And there are people who do that, right? And for those who want that, you go where they do that. But, at this point, I've not. But I'm sure there's many that have chosen something a little more exotic, if that's what you want to call it.
Do y'all have an outreach program?
Outreach, of course we do. For widows, we have outreach that we do in the community. Like just this past week, I went to a ribbon cutting for the first recycling center in the district where I serve. We try our best. There was not too long ago, for special needs girls, we did a pageant called Possibilities, and we assisted with that. We do all kinds. I was a part of a widows group. I do hospice events where you go and you support those, especially when children are in hospice. So there's a special foundation where people are assisting those who unfortunately have to face this, and there's no way around that. And there's a special group just to take care of children here in Houston. So outreach is definitely from fish dinners at the churches to clothing for women. We just did a big clothing drive at my location where we brought in old suits and, gently used clothing to donate to a women's group for professional women who are growing and going out into the workplace, and they need clothing. So a lot happens where I come from.
Have you planned your funeral out?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I've changed it a few times, and that's okay. It should be a living document.
What's something that your funeral plan includes that might surprise us?
Oh, that might surprise. Well, not really a surprise, but I would say the celebration of life piece. Everybody knows I like celebrating. So I kind of don't want that down, sad, dark. I want an open, maybe lighted, open window concept, patio feel. I don't want anyone to be in a dark space. I want, I one of my mottos is, shine the light from within. So I want light. I want sunflowers. I love butterflies. So I want patio experience. I love outdoors. I'm one of those girls, I love being by the water, right? So let's choose a space that would allow for that. So that is in my request.
I want it dark and gloomy. I want Stevie to come through and sing the saddest song in his catalog. I need some crying. I want some tear jerking. Screaming like,
and that's okay.
Calm them down.
Let them cry. They will.
I want 8 slow songs.
They'll cry.
I want 8 slow songs. Yeah. I want some crying. I want some hooping and hollering, like crying, like hold it down. I want somebody to faint. I need 3 girls to faint.
Well, you can hire mourners. I don't know. They used to do that back in the day.
Hire mourners.
I'm joking.
Wow.
I don't think they do it anymore.
Nah,
there
they
was
do
something
it.
back in the day.
Nah, they do
I
it.
will say this.
They still do it.
People would be surprised because I'm a funeral director that I don't want people seeing me.
You don't want anybody to see you?
Mm-mm. I want them to remember me as I was.
Do you want to be cremated?
I've toggled, and it's so amazing that you asked that question. I've toggled between the two because I want to be buried. But then I question sometimes, should I be cremated so I can be put in this beautiful new urn that I saw with butterflies on it and the sky and then the river at the bottom. And I said, I should be put in that. So, we joke about that sometimes, going back and forth. And that's okay because we don't always just decide, but at least be thinking about it. At least make that next step, write it down. You can change it. Even if you don't write it down, find a digital document that you trust somebody with, that you can share, right? Here's what I'm thinking. Google Sheets, right? If I share a Google Sheet with you, I can go in there and type it up in real time and you have access to it. Find a space to have those type details available. Because I changed my mind. I'm a funeral director. But I do know for sure I don't want people looking at me. How about that?
Well, that cremation part is key because that communicating that as your wish is key because
It is.
I know, like, in the black family, for some people, that's a cardinal sin.
It is.
So if they don't know that that's your wishes, it's going to be some furniture moving around when somebody say she wanted to be cremated.
I think it's the perception, and we can change that over time. I think the perception is cremation is the cheapest, right? That is not always the case. You can have a full service. Some people have a full service visitation, view me in a casket, everything, and then choose to cremate me at the end after everything's done. And then take me to the beach and, whatever, or take me to a final resting place where you bury my cremated remains. Some people choose a final resting place where they want to be remembered and go to be thought about, and then some don't, like you, right?
See, that's what I like. I like that. See, my thing is that I don't want to bring any undue pain to my loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people. I want to be cremated, but I need some evidence first. I want them to see it. They need to see it's real.
We have that.
I want them to know like it's real.
Yeah.
So I'm probably thinking like the casket, view it, everybody seeing it. It's
I'm
real.
gone. That's it. That's very good.
You see
that's
that,
a piece
and then
there.
and then after that, you shut that thing down. And I do believe that casket need to be closed. I was being facetious earlier about wanting people to cry and go crazy or whatever. I want people to remember me like I live my life with honor and dignity. So I don't want no hooping and hollering, no acting foolish and stuff going on at my funeral.
That's right.
Because some people use funerals
as a platform.
As a platform to get off. That's their platform. This is my chance. Nobody cares about what I ever have to say, so I'm going to speak at 2 minute expressions. That's my time to show off.
Don't have it. See, that's where you put it in your documentation.
Already, that's what I'm saying.
Take care of that.
No 2 minute expressions. You don't speak unless you're on the program.
That's
Point blank period. I don't care who you are.
Decency and order. That's it. My grandfather always
Police
said
officers on the bikes, at least one paddy wagon.
Okay.
Just in case somebody get out of line and they going crazy, whatever. Even if it's my own sister, brother, cousin, auntie, whatever. I want you to lock them up. Put them in jail because I would have wanted it. You know what I'm saying? Because we didn't have that in life. We're not gonna have it in death.
That's right.
I didn't move that way.
I love
so
it.
I need that respect.
That's right.
Because I believe that funerals are, people say it's for the living, but in that time, that person, the deceased, it's their moment.
That's right.
It's all about, the focus should be on that. That's right. Person, period. And no one should try to upstage that.
That's right.
No one should, the memory shouldn't be, such did this and this person did that or whatever.
Yeah.
No.
I love
it should be about the program and how wonderful. Everybody should say, oh, it was beautiful. You know?
Do you know why I say that's why you should write your own story? No one should have to write that for you, right? Because who can tell it better than you? And when you write that story and you dictate that, it changes things because those who are reading it know this is what he said, this is what he wanted. And anyone who comes against that, that's a problem. So we remove risk and problems, right?
Right.
And stay with what is stated. That's why it's so important. If nothing else, for people who choose, it's funny how we can, last one, agreement, we can agree to insure our lives through insurance on our health. We can insure our cars. We can insure our, anything.
Stuff that don't really matter.
That's going to leave you.
If you were on your deathbed and you was conscious of, this is my last time here. I'm out of here.
That's right.
I'm about to go. I ain't got no more.
So why is it that, the temple we've been entrusted with, we're not responsible for that? How much value does that show about ourselves? I value my family. I value what's important to me is when I'm gone, that the worry, the stress, you already got enough to deal with. That shouldn't be one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The viewing is very important for me as far as like, just as a celebrity, people like to throw around these. Every time a celebrity die, it's a conspiracy theory. Something happened. Somebody killed them. They did this. They did this. So I want to remove all of that type of stuff, you know. And it's like, and after it's over, you know, take my ashes, yeah, you know, and then spread them around H-Town, baby. You know
There
what I'm
you
talking
go.
about? Run that helicopter on them fools and drop it. You know, like, because
Lord, in the air?
yeah, like just drop them.
You have to have a certain altitude. We'll look that one up. I'll research
Yeah.
that for you.
Drop them.
Just like in the sea, you know, you have to go out so many nautical miles. The helicopter may have
drop
to
them
go up
things
so
in
many.
the air
Yeah.
and drop them things in the air, and I want to be able to fall right on top of one of these like rednecks' head, like get some of my ashes in his head.
Well, you know, let's see if we can make. We're gonna look into that one. I'll research it for you. I'll get back with you.
Yeah. What is it? What's another thing that you want people to know? I know planet is big.
Yeah.
You know, knowing how, you know, you want to be remembered is big.
That's it.
But what's another thing about, what's one of the misconceptions about the funeral business that you would like to share?
A misconception would be that somebody else will do this for me. Or a misconception could be the county will take care of it. Or I can just donate my body to science. I hear that so much. You can. There's a process for that too.
Yeah, that's to me is just very irresponsible.
Yeah.
To say somebody else will take care of it.
Yeah.
Like it's your responsibility.
But that's a misconception, right?
Yeah.
Or just throw me out back. Bury me in the backyard. You hear that?
Knowing that ain't gonna happen anyway. That's just a person.
Unless you're on a private ranch, we can make that happen.
But that's just
you have your own private property, we can make it happen. But here's the reality. When we really think about those we love, right? Do we want to hurt them? Usually not intentionally. But there is a level of pain that goes along with losing them and then having to carry the burden of that loss.
Exactly.
That's an extra level of pain that we could have minimized.
Think about this.
Yes.
You lost a loved one. You're grieving.
Correct.
And now you have to come up with money to bury them. And while they have final expenses, that buries you in debt.
Yes.
To me, that is very
Heartless.
selfish.
Very.
And if I mess with you in life, you're going to be all right when I die. I'm not going to leave you
With a burden.
with a financial burden.
That's honorable.
I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to people that I say I love,
That's right.
especially when it's so easy not to.
That's right.
It's just a matter of doing the work, not being lazy.
And priorities.
Not being irresponsible. Yeah.
Priorities.
Prioritizing, yeah. Yeah, you're right. You know,
Yeah.
it's a matter of priorities. And so, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
I'm very
This has been-
honored.
Yeah.
Yes. That you would
has
ask
been a
me
treat.
to.
Oh, absolutely.
And thank you.
You are one of the best. That's why I wanted to talk to you.
Well,
you
thank
know,
you.
and
I have served
somebody was
many.
trying to put me off to somebody else, and I was like, no, I want her. You know, you come with a very special set of skills.
Yes.
You know, and it's much needed, and it is much appreciated. Before I go, I want to talk real quickly about historical cemeteries,
Yes.
historically black cemeteries.
Yes. Many in Houston. You'd be surprised. And there's even, the church that I attend adopted a historically black cemetery that was abandoned. And there was no perpetual care. And they go annually and throughout the year, but they have a big push in the spring where they go and de-weed and trim and, reset markers and make sure that even though there's no family visiting. You're honoring them. So the power in that is we see some of our most historical cemeteries neglected. It could be because we're not going back there as often as a culture, right? It's not often visited, but it shouldn't be neglected. And some of these cemeteries were set up when there was no perpetual care, which means you pay a price for the cemetery to continue protecting your property, because the goal is, as long as the cemetery is there and alive, my family can come back to me no matter what generation. They should be able to do that. Not have to walk up and miles away from a distance look because they can't access the property because of weeds and overgrown bush and unapproachable spaces. So I believe there's a space for that. I'm not putting anything in your lap. I just believe that with the reach that you have, we may be able to look into ways that it's just like we call it Serve Sunday, where we gather and we go out and do things serving the community, whether it's as a team or as my family. I believe in serving. Maybe there's an opportunity there for some service or give back. And maybe it would be a space people can learn about the history and why it's so important to do this. I have a friend who, does cross guard work. She took her son with her today to be a crossing guard. He's a top athlete at an Ivy League school, but today he was a cross guard, right? Because he needs to learn.
Service.
There's a space for that. And if we start there, finding ways to serve, give back to those who can't say thank you, there's power in that. It's empowering you. You're the reward for this moment. You're getting that reward. And what I believe is that by serving others, which is what I do every day, you're reaping a harvest, is what I call it. You're sowing those seeds and you're reaping a harvest that no one can touch. But it starts from within. Yeah. So I hope that maybe in more conversations we have, we can do some research and maybe one day have a opportunity for people to come together in the community and do something for these historical spaces that need attention and support from the community.
One of the most fascinating things about what you do is the embalming process. Mm-hmm. Using embalming fluid to preserve the body from deteriorating too fast. Mm-hmm. Who came up with that concept?
Oh, you're going back to mortuary school. So if you really go back, I don't want to misquote, but my earliest memory in my notes is during the times of the Egyptians. So we look at embalming as the fluid that we use to preserve, right? The bodies were immersed into natural substances that preserve the body. That's why you see tombs with ancient mummies that were still preserved, right? Now, the original embalming, a great place to visit, and I can say this because I love this place and I'm neutral. There's a funeral museum on the north side of town, and it's connected to the school. And that funeral museum shows how embalming started in America, but it's from the same concepts of the earliest times that we know, that we still visit the American museums and we still visit different times of the year. You'll notice they'll have like a King Tut, or they'll have a display at the museum, and you'll go there and look at these mummies that have lived thousands of years. And it all started with the concept of preserving the deceased, because then tombs were purchased. Even in the time of Moses, when they were leaving Egypt and they were faced with the Red Sea, and now I'm talking about the Bible for those who don't understand that story, but they said, you brought us out here to die. Weren't there enough spaces in Egypt? They were worried about what? Burial property. That's how important having a place to be buried was. We've lost the space for that, but that still exists. We should still honor where we will be when our spirit is gone. So I believe that these are the type of conversations that evoke activity. My hope is that after someone hears this today, they will think and then act on what they should do so that their families don't have to wear the burden of the loss and the burning of the planning.
Yeah. When I was younger than I am now, we would often pass by funeral homes or cemeteries, and we'd be like, "Man, it sure is dead around here." And then somebody would look around and say, "Oh no, that's cold, that's cold, that's cold." To me, that's one of the longest and oldest jokes about the dead
Right.
that I know of.
Right.
Do you have one? I mean, is it cool to have a joke? This is cool
Of
to
course.
joke about
We say we
death?
put the fun in funeral. Because
That's a good one. I never heard of that one.
we
put
do.
the fun in funeral.
We
Wow.
try to. Let me tell you why,
Yeah.
though. Because you're already dealing with difficult times, right? You have to have time of laughter and joy.
Mm-hmm.
So we look for those opportunities. You'd be surprised how much fun we have. My team, we just went at Crawfish Sunday together as a team. We have gatherings. We go bowling together. We go putt-putt golfing together. We look for opportunities to celebrate and enjoy each other's company. Because you spend more time with these people than you do with your own family sometimes. And then you have some people that move here and they don't, and just to come work with us because they're the one in their family and there's no family here for them. We are their family. So I just believe putting the fun in funeral takes some of the morbidity out of it. So we do. We have fun. And we bring joy. And, even to our families. I've had families tell me, for this to be the most difficult time, you made it so much better or easier or lighter. I think that's a piece of it. It's making the experience that's already difficult a little less. By how we love on them and show them care and attention, the best possible care we can offer. Celebrate. We do life story tables where we put out a little something that even if you didn't know the person, you can walk by this display and learn something about them and how they lived. I did it for my father. He loved Jet magazines. We had some old Jets out. He had a record player. We put his record player out, Teddy Pendergrass album out. He loved the fact that he served his country. So we had out all of his medals. He loved gardening. So we put out actual plants from his garden that we potted in some of his pots and his tools, and we had those displayed. My dad was from Louisiana. He loved to cook. So we had his hot pots, and we had out his, all of his cookware and his apron that the kids made for him with his nickname on the front on a mannequin. Like, we made a full display to honor my dad. So when people came, they're like, what is this about? This is his life story. This is how he lived his life. This is what he enjoyed. This is what brought him joy. So when they walk in and see that, it's amazing. Because not only are they seeing their loved one, they're seeing the memories that they may not have talked about. The figurine that he kept by his bedside, we put it there, right? So when people see that, they know it's him. My dad traveled. He was in Germany, all over the world. So we put out some of his artifacts from his traveling days, So it makes it so much more memorable and personal.
Well, Kenita Lewis Harrison, you have made this episode memorable.
Well, thank you.
And amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No more talk.